Decisions have a lot of power in our life, even though we don't often think about it. They're not necessarily a destiny, but they surely control the trajectory of our life. And when I say trajectory, I mean the direction that we go. For instance, I chose to go to a boarding school when I was in high school, and that's where I met my wife, and she's been with me 51 years. So you see, there was a beginning there, a trajectory, even though it wasn't necessarily the end destiny. There were a lot of decisions that I made thereafter. There's something called deductive reasoning, and even though we don't use that word a lot, we use that reasoning all the time in our life, whether we think we do or not. And deductive reasoning is that reasoning that randomly takes things and will use that as a justification for a particular something that we decide. For instance, we can, if the loan goes through, then God intended for me to have this. I mean, we do that kind of stuff. I do that kind of stuff. That is deductive reasoning. And that is not necessarily what God's will is. And I think that we need to maybe look at that and explore that and ask ourselves how it is that God intended for us to make decisions and how we make good decisions in our life. I was watching the Senate hearing the other day, and they're called oversight, where senators come in and they bring in a witness and they pummel them with questions for, I don't know, sometimes 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, some ungodly number of hours they question them. But one of the things that really frustrates me is when a senator will ask a question and then say, the answer is yes or no, yes or no. Tell me right now, is it yes or no? And I would like to say two things to that senator. Two things I would like to say to that senator. First of all, you can ask me any question you want, but you don't get to decide what the answer is. The second thing is, maybe the answer is in neither yes or no. I mean, there's a lot of distance between yes or no. There are a lot of questions that are none of the above, see? And I would just like to say that. So I really think when senators or congressmen do that, they're really trying to get a particular outcome, or they're trying to stay in control of something. Control of something. Jesus was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights. He came out of that, and he was tempted in every way that human beings are tempted. And one of the things that Satan says to him, I will give to you if you will do this. The implied assumption there is that Satan had the authority, or Satan had the power to give Jesus what he was telling him he would give him. And he didn't have that authority. It didn't belong to Satan. It wasn't his to give. So often we give authority to things that don't have that authority, weren't intended to have that authority, never meant to have that authority. When we do deductive reasoning, for instance, well, you know, I just think this is a sign that we should get married, or this is the right person, or all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean any of that. God never intended to hide his will from you. He wants you to know it, but you know it by knowing him. You see, in seeking him, you see, it is automatic that you know his will for your life. I guess it's been several years ago. In fact, it was in 2004. There was a man in Greeley, Colorado named Marvin. And I don't know if you remember seeing this on the news. But he owned a muffler shop in Greeley, Colorado, and had been there for years and years and years, and was the muffler guy in that town. Did a great job. Everybody liked him, and all of this kind of stuff. And one day the city council decides that they're going to put city water and city sewer into the city. And they're going to mandate that every house, that every business hook into that system in order to pay for it and in order to maintain it. And it seems that his business was located far enough away from where the lines would come through that it was going to cost him $80,000. Well, that is a lot of money. I mean, a whole lot of money. He didn't like it, and he protested and did all of these kind of things. And one day he shows up in Los Angeles at an auction and bids on this huge bulldozer. Huge bulldozer. I mean, it's mammoth. And he rents a truck, and he pulls that bulldozer home on a trailer, all the way back to Greeley, Colorado. And he sits it in the driveway of his business and puts a for sale sign on it. And people are like, what is this? This is strange. And it is strange that somebody go all the way to Los Angeles and buy this mammoth bulldozer and then put it up for sale. And it stays there, though, until wintertime comes. And he pulls it into the garage and essentially disappears for basically the winter. Greeley, Colorado has cold and bad winters, and he disappears. And nobody sees him until one spring day, okay? This bulldozer comes busting through the door of this business, this muffler business, and it has this shell that's been built around it out of 3/4 inch steel. And he's driving this thing down the street, runs over 3 or 4 police cars, then goes to the courthouse, plows it down, then to the city library and plows it down, 3 or 4 of the city council members and plows them down before they can put a canister down into this bulldozer and stop him and literally kill him. Now, what is most interesting about Marvin is when they searched his home, they found his journal, and in this journal, he writes this: if God wants me to do this, or doesn't want me to do this, I'm going to put it for sale, and if somebody buys it, then I'm not supposed to do it. Okay? And then when he goes to pull it into the garage after nobody buys it, there's an inch on either side of the bulldozer. And he says, listen to this, that's affirmation that God wants me to do this because it just barely fits. I can't tell you how many times that people have brought that kind of reasoning to me and said, I just feel like this is what God wants me to do. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. And the truth of the matter is, those things were never empowered with that kind of authority. They were never given the right to decide that in my life. You see, I make decisions based on a moral compass inside of me that I have because I know God. If I want to know God's will, I seek Him first, and everything else happens.